Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the English Learning Podcast. I'm Sarah, and joining me, as always, is Bill.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, everyone. We're so glad you're here with us today.
Today, we're going to talk about something many English learners find challenging: how I can understand, but I can't speak. It's a feeling many people experience. Have you ever felt like this, Bill?
Definitely. You can watch movies or listen to podcasts and understand everything, but when it's your turn to speak, your mind goes blank. It's so common and can be really frustrating.
Exactly. But don't worry. In this episode, we'll explore why this happens and share practical tips to help you start speaking more confidently.
So, if you've ever struggled with this, stay tuned. We have some great advice and stories coming your way.
And before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, share it with your friends, and leave a review. It really helps us reach more learners like you.
Perfect. Let's get started.
So, Bill, let's talk about the problem that many English learners face. Understanding English well, but struggling to speak it.
Yes, Sarah. It's such a common experience. For example, I remember when I was learning Spanish. I could understand nearly everything on TV shows and conversations, but when someone asked me a question, I just froze.
That's exactly it. You're not a beginner anymore, but when it comes to speaking, it feels like your brain understands the language perfectly, but your mouth just can't keep up.
It's like your brain and mouth are out of sync. You hear and comprehend, but when it's your turn to talk, you don't know where to start.
And sometimes, even when you want to speak, you hold back because you're afraid of making mistakes or sounding silly.
Right. So many learners think that because they understand, speaking should come naturally. But understanding is a passive skill, while speaking is active and needs practice.
That's an important distinction. And throughout this episode, we'll help you understand why that gap exists and what you can do to close it. Now that we've defined the problem, let's dive into why understanding English is often easier than speaking it. Bill, what are some reasons you've noticed?
Well, Sarah, one big reason is that understanding is a passive skill, while speaking is active. When you listen or read, you're receiving information. But when you speak, you have to produce language on your own. That's much harder.
Exactly. When you listen, you can take your time to process the words, but speaking requires you to quickly find the right words and put them together correctly.
Another reason is fear. Many learners are afraid of making mistakes or sounding bad, so they avoid speaking altogether.
That's true. Fear can freeze people up. Also, most learners get much more listening practice than speaking practice, especially if they don't have regular chances to talk with native speakers.
Yes, and this is where the idea of input versus output comes in. Input means listening and reading. Output means speaking and writing. Input is usually easier because you're not under pressure to respond immediately.
Good point. Also, the silent period is something many language learners experience. It's a natural phase where learners absorb a lot but don't speak much. It's part of the learning process but can last longer than it should if not addressed.
Plus, speaking uses different brain muscles, like memory recall, pronunciation, and grammar on the fly. Those skills take time and practice to build.
So, the gap between understanding and speaking comes from both mental and emotional reasons, plus practice opportunities.
And knowing this is the first step to overcoming the challenge.
Now, Bill, let's talk about some of the psychological and emotional factors that make speaking so hard, even when you understand everything.
Definitely, Sarah. One of the biggest barriers is anxiety. Many learners feel nervous or embarrassed about speaking because they're worried about making mistakes or being judged.
That fear can really freeze people up. It's normal to feel that way, but if you let it control you, it stops your progress.
Exactly. There's also something called the silent period. This is when learners spend a lot of time listening and absorbing the language, but don't speak much. It's natural at the start, but can become a habit if you don't push yourself.
And sometimes, low confidence plays a role. If you don't believe in your ability to speak well, you might avoid trying altogether.
That's why mindset is so important. Changing how you think about mistakes and learning can make a huge difference.
Like seeing mistakes as part of the learning process instead of failures.
Right. And practicing positive self-talk, like telling yourself, it's okay to make mistakes, I'm improving, can help reduce anxiety.
Also, preparation helps. When you practice phrases or topics in advance, you feel more confident when speaking.
So, managing your emotions and mindset is just as important as practicing your language skills.
Now that we understand the psychological side, let's get practical. Bill, what are some effective techniques learners can use to start improving their speaking skills?
Great question, Sarah. One technique I always recommend is shadowing. It's when you listen to a sentence or phrase and immediately repeat it out loud, trying to mimic the pronunciation and intonation.
Yes, shadowing helps your mouth get used to the sounds and rhythm of English. It's like training your muscles to speak more naturally.
Another useful method is repetition. Repeating words or phrases multiple times helps build your muscle memory. It might feel boring, but it really works.
Definitely. Also, practicing with language apps or online platforms that connect you with native speakers or other learners can be very helpful.
And don't forget role-playing. You can practice everyday conversations by pretending to be in different situations, like ordering food at a restaurant or asking for directions.
That's a fun way to prepare for real-life speaking. Another tip is recording yourself speaking. When you listen back, you can notice areas to improve and track your progress.
Absolutely. And remember, it's important to start small. Don't aim for perfect sentences right away. Focus on simple, short phrases and gradually build up.
I also suggest using daily conversations as practice. Talk about your day. Describe what you're doing, even if it's just to yourself.
That helps build confidence and gets you comfortable speaking English regularly.
So, to sum up, shadowing, repetition, language apps, role-playing, recording yourself, and starting small are all excellent ways to improve your speaking.
And the key is consistency. The more you practice, the more natural speaking will become.
Bill, we've talked about techniques, but how important is it to build a daily habit of speaking?
It's crucial, Sarah. Just like exercising, language skills improve with regular practice. Speaking every day, even for a few minutes, makes a huge difference.
That's right. Even if you don't have someone to talk to, you can practice by speaking to yourself. Narrate your actions, describe what you see, or think out loud in English.
Yes, and try to include English in your daily routine. For example, think in English while cooking or walking, or try to mentally form sentences about what you're doing.
And if you can, find conversation partners online or in person. Speaking with others not only helps practice, but also makes learning more enjoyable.
Another tip is to set small, achievable goals, like speaking English for 5 minutes each day, then gradually increasing the time.
Consistency beats intensity. Even short daily practice sessions can lead to big improvements over time.
Exactly. The key is to make speaking English a natural part of your day.
Before we wrap up, Bill, let's talk about some common mistakes learners make when trying to improve their speaking skills.
Sure, Sarah. One big mistake is overcorrecting yourself. Some learners get stuck trying to speak perfectly and end up not speaking at all.
That's right. It's better to speak and make mistakes than to stay silent because you're afraid of errors.
Another mistake is focusing too much on grammar before speaking. Grammar is important, but don't let it stop you from practicing speaking.
Exactly. Speaking helps you learn grammar naturally over time, so don't wait to be perfect before you start talking.
And lastly, some learners expect instant results and get discouraged when they don't speak fluently right away.
Progress takes time and patience. Celebrate small victories and keep going. As we near the end, Bill, what final encouragement can we give to our listeners who struggle with speaking?
I'd say be patient and kind to yourself. Learning to speak takes time, and every small step forward is progress.
Absolutely. Remember, mistakes are part of learning, so don't fear them. Embrace them.
And keep practicing regularly. The more you speak, the more confident you'll become.
You've got this. Stay consistent, and soon speaking English will feel natural. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the English Learning Podcast.
We hope you found our tips helpful and feel inspired to start speaking more.
Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with your friends, and leave us a review. It really helps us reach more learners like you.
And stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll talk about how to improve your English pronunciation.
Until then, keep practicing and have a great day.